Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishna Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpaturubhyascha Kripasindave Vacha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Radhara Shivasari Shri Gauri Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dandavats. I was getting ready to try to do this, and I had an important call come through, so I had to stop, and then so I'm kind of restarting now. But anyway, this is a follow-up to a talk that I gave yesterday after listening to a class which was inclusive of discussions on the quote controversial statements of Al Srila Prabhupada, both in morning walks, room conversations, in the books themselves. So I think if you look at the other video, it pretty much gives my, though passionately presented, feeling about that conversation and that particular class. But what I did want to follow up with today was a discussion on the idea of what is perfection of pure Vaishnavas. Because one of the conjectures and one of the sort of subjective ideas to try to reconcile or to try to resolve these statements of Srila Prabhupada, the quote controversial statements of race, gender, sexual orientation statements, etc., is that there's not a necessity that being a pure devotee or being a pure realized soul is concomitant with being perfect in all other categories. In other words, there's the idea that you may be spiritually perfect, but materially imperfect. So that's the gist. But just taking a look at that statement, that you can be spiritually perfect, but materially imperfect, you run across two problems. One problem is that the statement itself is not sensible. That if you've obtained an absolute perfection, then relative perfection is really meaningless, because in relativity there is no perfection. You understand? Or if you try to say that because there is no perfection in relativity, then anytime a perfected spiritual person deals within the material realm, they will be influenced by imperfection because there is no perfection relatively speaking. Then you're saying the same thing as Mayavadis say about the descent of Krishna. That when Krishna comes into the material world, he must of necessity take on some of the qualities of the material world. So this is Mayavad. So that any pure devotee, then since they're dealing within the material world, they may display imperfections because of their interaction with the material atmosphere. But rather we should understand that absolute purity, pure spiritual perfection, transcends, the very meaning of the word, transcends every state of existence. And therefore their perfection is not hindered by their being in the arena of the material energy. That's the difference between pure realized souls and conditioned souls. So now, how do we match that up or align that with our discussion on the statements of Srila Prabhupada, which in an attempt to reconcile them or to rationalize them, we've come up with these kind of speculations that somehow or another the pure devotee, upon coming into the platform of dealing with the material arena, and of course in the class, the person giving the class, who I have respect for, which is a very nice devotee actually, and I consider a learned devotee. I don't know the exact reasoning behind the presentation that was given, but the idea that coming from Uttam Bhagavat, right, to the platform of Madhyam Bhagavat is also, there's an inference, and this was one of the key words I picked up, that he said by inference, right? So one of the first things we should deal with is that Jiva Goswami Pad is given 10 types of praman. Shastra gives 10 types of praman, right? Praman means that which offers proof of something, a prameya, right? That which is proven is proved by praman. So he offers 10 types. Among them, one is anuman, which means inference. But he says of all the different types of praman, pratyaksha, anuman, so many others, that only Shabda Brahman, it means sastra, transcendental sound, is the absolute perspective. Everything else can support Shastra Praman, but no one of these other Pramans can actually stand alone as any kind of substantial validation of something. Right? So, in this case, we don't find it anywhere in Shastra that when a pure Vaishnav, Uttam Bhagavat Vaishnav, comes to the Madhyam level for the sake of preaching, they somehow, their perfection is compromised and they take on the ability to manifest imperfections of some kind of human quality of imperfection. There's nowhere that's mentioned in Shastra. And because it is not mentioned in Shastra, it cannot be accepted as an actual factual statement in regards to the nature of pure devotees or anything they may present. So I explained yesterday that perhaps one of the things we have to look at is that on our part, being conditioned souls, on our part, there is the possibility of imperfection. So there is the possibility that we may misperceive something. There is the possibility that we may have a misunderstanding. There is the possibility that we can misidentify because of the nature of a ahamkara, false ego, and the nature of our conditioned life. We may make mistakes. But one of the features of pure Vaishnavas is that they don't make mistakes. Those four tendencies, cheating, making mistakes, imperfect senses, and the cheating propensity, it exists in conditioned living beings. It is not something that exists in realized perfected souls. So, how do we deal with the statements that Srila Prabhupada has made? I explained it yesterday. Srila Prabhupada's statements fall into two categories. One is analysis, commentary, etc. on the material world as a whole, which would be inclusive of the karmic arrangements of various souls, means whatever body they're born in, whatever mental state they may be born with, whatever sociological conditions are surrounding them, etc. It's all part of their karmic portfolio. So Srila Prabhupada talked about the material world, its temporal nature, its ever mutating nature, its transitory nature, and its imposition by influence of Maya on the soul itself. So he spoke about all of these things. But he foundationed all of these conversations on a very important platform, is that, excuse me, I'm speaking fast now. He foundationed all of this on a platform of recognition that the soul is in fact different from all of these material things. So the soul is not black, white, rich, poor, etc., etc. That is the karmic portfolio. That is the manifest prarabdha karma of the soul in the form of the current body. But the reality is that the soul is not that body. That's foundational reality. Therefore, statements that are made regarding this body and the condition of the body in all the various categories and intersections and the faults that are pointed out within that, these are all commentary on the nature of the material world versus the spiritual world. They're not commentaries which have a genesis in Srila Prabhupada's own material standing, so to speak. Like he's an ordinary conditioned soul, and therefore maybe there's some residue of racism, residue of homophobia, residue of xenophobia, residue of something material in this way or that way. No. Srila Prabhupada's vision is absolute. Right? Now, I also heard that some people will accept that that is a position and it's extreme. But I would venture to say, no, it's not a position that's extreme. It is based on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That Guru is Sakshat Hari Dvaina Samasta Shastriya. All Shastras have confirmed that Guru Dev is Sakshat Haritva, that he is like Bhagavan. And it never mentions anywhere that being Sakshat Haritva means like Bhagavan is conditional to when they're in their inner nature, but when they come to the outer nature, like the Acharya Lila, etc., then they lose that perfected state and somehow become compromised by human qualities. But no, Mukunda, wait a minute. Didn't Srila Prabhupada have heart attacks, or didn't Srila Prabhupada display sickness, etc., etc.? If you read Jiva Goswami Pad's writings on these things, he explains that during the Acharya Lila, pure Vaishnavas accept within the Acharya Lila, right? They accept disease, sickness, various things as part of the Lila of being the Acharya. Just as Bhagavan accepts certain things like the Mosala Lila, etc., etc., is accepted by Bhagavan as a way to end one Lila and begin another. So similarly, the pure Vaishnava, they're not the product of the material energy. You understand? So in their Acharya Lila, what they display is not coming from the influence of Maya or illusion or from the material energy. It is actually also a pastime of Yog Maya. This is according to Shastra. If somebody can find somewhere in Shastra where I'm wrong, I ask you please present it. I presented some Shastra Praman, right? And just for the sake of brevity, I'm not going down so many. But certainly, there's so many statements showing the absolute nature of the pure Vaishnava. So, the idea that the pure Vaishnava has some mixed quality, a lot of it has come about because of witnessing persons who have accepted the position of Guru, but factually have not had the realization of Guru. And because people have seen this, now there's a kind of equation with, well, I want to feel like that person is pure because they have the term Guru, but I also see discrepancies in their behavior, etc., which come from the influence of Maya. Therefore, I'm going to apply that also even to pure, actual pure devotees and say, well, the reality is that even those who are so-called pure can have a human side. Show me in Shastra, please, if that's a fact. They have a human side which is corruptible in some way or another by the influence of material energy, and they can make mistakes. They can't say things that are wrong. They can't... No. If you can point this out to me in Shastra anywhere, as I said, I am willing to have that discussion. But I'm not willing to entertain personal opinion, conjecture, the opinion of others who someone may regard who don't necessarily garner, the regard of the Vaishnav Mandal, right? And I'm speaking about like in the academic community. Some people may regard an academic institution, the professors thereof, etc., as authorities. And they may be, in fact, authorities in their relative fields of expertise. But in the absolute realm of bhakti are they authorities, because the absolute realm of bhakti requires one to be self-realized, to be considered authoritative as far as we're concerned. So, don't misunderstand that as disrespect for the relative expertise someone may have. I certainly hope that in any given profession that I've had, whether it was one thing or another, that people respect that, okay, he has expertise in that field. right? Relatively speaking. But it certainly didn't qualify me for being expert in all things bhakti because I'm not a self-realized soul, right? Now I am speaking from Guru, Sadhu, and Sastra, however, right? And speaking from Guru, Sadhu, Sastra, I have a firm platform to stand on to describe the idea that the conjecture that pure Vaishnavas, true pure Vaishnavas, their purity is somehow compromised when they operate in the arena for preaching in Madhyam Bhagavat. First of all, we need to be clear, what is Madhyam Bhagavat? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad has described 3 kinds of Bhagavat in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bindu. He's described Bhagavat Parasadeya Pra, those who have obtained the status of Parasads of Bhagavan, means associates or eternal associates of Bhagavan, right? Those who are near Dut Koshai. The word Koshai means a lingering impression of some sort that comes within the consciousness due to having contact with material energy. So the Madhyam Uttam Bhagavat is described as someone who is near the Dut Koshai, who's cast off all Koshai. They don't have any influence of material energy anywhere in their consciousness. Another category is called Murchit Koshai. Murchit Koshai means those who have obtained perfection, but the possibility of the influence of a lingering aparad or something like that may still be there, right? We cannot say that our Srila Prabhupada is in the category of Murchit Koshai. Srila Prabhupada we accept as being an eternal associate. If you want to debate that fact, that's another thing, right? But we accept Srila Prabhupada's eternal associate of Bhagavan. He's a personification of the fulfillment of the prophecy of Mahaprabhu. So we cannot say that Srila Prabhupada coming to Madhyam Bhagavat, in which Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha, the ability to see various levels of Krishna consciousness and lack thereof for the sake of being able to preach, makes him less perfect somehow or another. Coming from Uttamadikar to Madhyamadikar for preaching does not mean that. First of all, you have to understand the difference between Uttam Bhagavat and Madhyam Bhagavat. Rupa Goswami is also given eligibilities for the practice of sadhana bhakti as Uttam, Madhyam, and Kanishta, and that is different from the consideration of Uttam Bhagavat. So first, there has to be some study to understand the differentiation between those two things. For instance, the Madhyam Adhikar in eligibility of sadhana is Sastra Yukti Nahi Joni. He doesn't even fully understand Sastra. He may have Drita Shradayana, firm faith. On the other hand, those who are Uttamadikar in eligibility for practice of bhakti, Sastra Yukti Suni Punya Drita Shradayana. Uttamadikari say Tare Sangsar. They are Sastra and Sastra Yukti, means they understand Sastra and the logic and have some realization. But even they cannot be equated. They can't be equated with Srila Prabhupada necessarily, who is realized soul. Just 1 minute, Prabhu. Who's realized eternal associate of Bhagavan. Coming to the platform of Madhyam Bhagavat. These are two different things. So I have some other duties to perform. So I'm going to end here. But I just wanted to make it clear that actually the whole conjecture and speculation of somehow or another that a pure devotee coming from Uttam Bhagavat to Madhyam Bhagavat somehow co-opts, corrupts, or compromises their purity and also compromises their perfection is absolutely not true. It may be an opinion, right? But it is not any sastric fact. You understand? All right, so I have some other duties to attend to, so I'm going to end here. But I said that I would do a follow-up to yesterday to try to explain this idea. Jai. So, Vanchakalpaturvischa, Kripasindavevacha, Patitanam Pavaneva, Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.